Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Urban Blueprint, a podcast created by the UVic Real Estate Club to help educate students about the real estate industry. I'm very excited to announce today's guest, founder and president of the UVic Real Estate Club, co-founder of the Student Housing Initiative, and a member of the 2024 BC Business Magazine 30 Under 30, Julian Wells.
Thanks for having me, Aiden.
Of course. You're the president. It was about time. Come on. So, listen, this will be much more of a casual conversation because obviously we know each other.
A little bit.
And yeah, just a little bit, just a tiny bit. So this is going to be great, man. I think it's just really good for you to get a chance to tell your story to the people, see the reason that this whole thing exists in the flesh right here. So thanks for joining me, Sheldon. Anything you want to say before we get going?
No, I'm stoked to be here. I'm so thankful to you for all the work you've done this year building this out, and really just thrilled to see how far it's come. I think, podcast and content has been a huge vision of mine, and I genuinely can't think of a better person to execute on it. So
appreciate it, man.
Just thank you so much.
We're here. We made it. All right, man. Well, listen, I know a lot about you, but they don't. So let's just get started with your story, man. You're from Toronto, so how did you end up in Victoria? What was the goal in coming here?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm pretty old, almost. I'm turning 22 this year. Aiden, you're also turning 22.
Yeah,
crazy.
I'm older, so it's just...
Yeah. No, that's okay. I graduated high school in the class of 2020. I'm guessing you did as well.
Yeah.
Classic. And being from Toronto, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. I kind of just wanted to explore a different part of the country, and being COVID, I didn't get a chance to tour that many universities.
Yeah.
So I kind of just had the chance to tour UVic, UBC, SFU, and really just loved UVic and just could see myself here and decided to come out and study. And honestly, it's been one of the best decisions I could have ever made.
Yeah, I bet. And would you say the business scene of Victoria is a big reason for that too? Just how closely knitted it is? Or?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even realize that I was going to end up going into business. I think when I started, I was just focused on political science, and I wanted to go into law after I graduate. That I no longer want to go into law.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was the fact that it was a big enough school that I could still get a good education,
right.
But a small enough school and like a close-knit enough community
right.
that you can kind of stand out, have an impact, create new things.
Yeah.
And that was really attractive to me. And I don't know, kind of led to me creating things as opposed to just
best of both worlds. Yeah,
exactly right. Like I don't know.
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, you've obviously done well. I know in the intro there I mentioned 30 Under 30, BC Business Magazine. Tell us a bit more about that. I don't even know the criteria myself, so lay it all out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Honestly, I think the nominations or applications were at the beginning of January, and I was encouraged to apply. I think it was I was flying back from Toronto at the end of Christmas break,
right.
And I just thought, okay, I'm in the airport for a couple hours, I might as well knock out one of these applications. It was 10 200-word responses, and I've been encouraged to apply, so I thought I would do it. I honestly told 2 people I thought I had no chance of being selected, but somehow I did an interview and was selected, got the chance to go to Vancouver for a photo shoot, and I think the issue is now live, which is super exciting.
Right.
I don't know, I really don't believe that it's happened. It doesn't really feel real. I think for the first month or two, I expected to get an email saying, sorry, not you. We didn't mean you.
Right.
We meant all these other people, but not you. So I don't know, very, very blessed and unfortunate, but did not expect that.
Yeah, well, and you're definitely deserving of it, man. And it's interesting to hear how humble you are about it, but it's great. And I wanted to know too, in terms of the age of everyone, you say you feel you don't think you were chosen wrong, whatever, but is everyone else a bit older? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've only met four others of the 30. There's a dinner in Vancouver in the middle of April that I'll go, and I assume I'll meet the other 25. But of the 4 that were in the photo shoot with me, I think 3 of them were late 20s, and another one she's 21 and at SFU and had co-founded a nonprofit focusing on educating high schoolers on how to administer naloxone.
Oh, cool!
It's super cool.
Yeah, that's
very interesting, and she's done amazing stuff. But yeah, that was sort of a bit of a bifurcation of age.
Right.
But,
is it split into different sections, or is it just a complete?
No, it's just a complete one. Honestly, I don't know. I still don't know how I got it, but I'm very appreciative. But it's cool.
Yeah. Well, I believe by the time this episode comes out, the issue will be out as well.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure to link in the description for anyone that wants to check it out. That's awesome. And yeah, it's great. I wanted to transition a little bit to probably one of the bigger reasons that you got it, which is the real estate club. This right here, what we got going on. How'd that start? Why?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like I mentioned, when I came out here to do school, I was focused on like political science, and then I ended up sort of transitioning into political science and economics, and really had no idea that I wanted to even get involved in real estate until I ended up meeting like a mentor in some of the most random settings you possibly can, whether it was like through Twitter or like a video game. Like it's one of my favorite stories. And from there, it really sort of ignited my passion for housing. And I just sort of recognized that, like if I wanted to learn about real estate and we're at UVic, where there's no courses, there's literally nothing. There's going to be other people who also wanted to learn about real estate, and they shouldn't have to do it on their own. So I just, after my first internship, I had a bit of confidence in my network and my knowledge, and kind of just put it together, and we've just been riding the wave ever since.
Yeah, and that's you started with John. You started completely by yourself.
Yeah, I started by myself. We hired 5 VPs. This is one of the more interesting decisions we've made, is like hiring 5 VPs right off the bat, and like giving no one a differentiated title.
Right.
I don't know. I think when you're starting something out like that, it's really valuable to give everyone, like put everyone on a level playing field, and sort of let people show you what they're interested in, let people show you what they want to get involved with.
Right.
And just based on that, we sort of had different teams naturally formed. Like we had a external team, a marketing team, and a political engagement team. And then once we hit January of last year, so January 2023, we'd seen the growth. We hired more people, and that was kind of that was when we repositioned into like a normal organization where you don't have 5 vice presidents, and instead have like VPs and directors. And
so that's interesting to hear that I actually didn't know this. You didn't really start getting into real estate until you got to school.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to hear that story about how you met or how you got interested in real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So like first of all, I have been super interested in like housing growing up. Like I would always watch like the Love It or List It shows, the Property Brothers with my parents.
HGTV.
Exactly. Like I love that, but I never thought I would ever like turn it into a career in any capacity. And it was like end of grade 12. COVID was happening, so we were like in classes, but we didn't really actually have school because it was online and no one actually went to classes. And
it was free.
Exactly. And we didn't, like our marks couldn't go down. So it was one of those things where I was honestly just playing like Call of Duty constantly, like nonstop. And in COD, like you go into random lobbies. I haven't played in like 2 years, but like you go into random lobbies, meet random people, and one of the people I matched into a lobby with was like a accountant in Chicago.
Wow.
So we won our first game together, and we kept playing, and then I ended up just playing with him and his friends. And his like adoptive brother was an accounting director in New Orleans, who was also like a real estate investor. And I ended up playing with them for like 9 months, and I think
that's wild.
Like basically like 10 months in, or like all that time in, he asked, like he knew I was interested in business and interested in real estate. He asked if I wanted to be his virtual assistant to help with like he was acquiring like a development property like outside New Orleans. And I sort of jumped at the opportunity, and he's still like one of my closest mentors, and we finally met in person for the first time in 2021. Awesome. But that was the catalyst. So that was the first introduction into the industry. And then from there, I got my first internship by DMing a founder of a real estate private equity fund on Twitter. Still one of the craziest stories.
Twitter DMs.
The real estate Twitter, it's a cool place if you dive into it and learn more on there. But I think as like a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old is kind of not the target demographic for it.
Probably not.
Stand out. Things like stand out a little bit. And from there, I asked if he was I just asked him for his advice, then asked if he was hiring an intern. He asked me to send him my resume. We jumped on a quick Zoom call. It turned out their team of 3, they were hiring to expand to 10.
Okay.
Weren't even planning to hire an intern, but they were hosting an offsite in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So after a 30-minute Zoom call, he flew me out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to participate in the offsite, meet the rest of the team.
Okay.
One of the coolest weekends ever.
Just on a whim?
Yeah, genuinely. I think my parents were a little bit concerned when I told him, but he's like super legit. One of the coolest people I've ever met, and as much as I don't work with him anymore, like he's still a big, like I'm still super inspired by him. He used to work at Blackstone, which is one of the big real estate private equity companies, and ran like a hedge fund and crazy stuff. But
very crazy.
Anyways, so that's how I got into real estate, and
so
lots of random stuff.
So once you got into real estate, what's kept you around? You know, what excites you about real estate? What makes it you want to be your career?
Absolutely. I think fundamentally our housing market in Canada is so flawed, so frustrating. I think as students we all know how challenging it is to find housing. And that's only going to get worse unless we do something about it. So I think that's really my driving factor. What like inspires me to keep going is trying to have that positive impact on the housing crisis and on the housing market so that we can eventually maybe have affordable housing. Say it like it's actually gonna happen. It's a long shot. I think it would be great. There's a lot of cool projects going on that different like governments doing and different private companies are doing, and I'm hopeful, but you never know.
You never know. And so and go back to the club too. You know, it's been around for almost 2 years now, right? So it's a big, that relatively big sample size. So what would you say you're most proud of so far? If you had to narrow, you can touch on a few things if you want, but just what is the most proud moments you've had looking back on these years?
No, that's a tough question. I think probably most proud of our impact on like the housing market specifically. I think like our advocacy and political engagement wing is something that we don't really like post about on social media or talk about outside of our like internal team, because we don't do it for like building a external brand. But I think it has a tangible impact, and like I can dive into that a little more in a second.
100%.
Otherwise, I think just like meeting peers who are interested in the same thing. I think like some of my closest friends have come from like getting involved with the real estate club, and just being able to see people who are passionate and interested come into something and get involved and grow. Like I'm very much a believer that like whatever I'm doing, I'll always try to tie in people who are like involved in my network somehow or doing cool things, and I just like them.
Be collaborative.
Exactly, right? So I think the opportunity to meet like-minded people and who are just inspired and passionate about the same thing has been incredible.
Well, that's how you make real change and innovation, really. I think that's why our club's been so successful, because you built it off that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I know this is crazy, but I do just enjoy talking about this.
I do too. This is fun. Like I'm not bothered. I kind of forget the cameras now. Just big part of the club recently has been the political side. So I just wanted to see if you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like when I founded the club, we were hyper focused on networking, hyper focused on connecting students to the real estate industry, and like creating that education UVic is very much lacking. And over the course of the first couple months and sort of heading into early 2023, we really realized how important like politics is to housing. And that was something that like had never occurred to me. Basically, we just ended up seeing the impact of the student voice. We got involved in a public hearing like last February, and essentially just brought like our entire team. It was like 10, 11, 12 students. And we all spoke about like our struggles finding housing, some of the things our friends have gone through. I think one person mentioned that like someone they knew was renting a backyard to pitch a tent and then using the inside facilities, like washroom and the kitchen.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Insane. And the city councilors, like they were thrown by it almost. Like they quoted exactly what we were saying and used that as reasons why they wanted to approve the rental project, which was huge for us, right? And I think that very much like fundamentally changed what we were doing, because we were sort of all of a sudden able to see that tangible impact that we were able to provide. Essentially, like as students, we don't have, at least initially, I didn't think we had a lot of sway or power when it came to what gets approved.
We were the bottom of the pool.
Exactly, like, and it kind of feels like that when we're looking for housing. Like it feels like no one wants to rent to students.
Honestly.
But the truth is, like, in terms of approval and in terms of that, like of the public hearing process, we have a ton of power. And that's been something I've been really proud about, is our ability to sort of get involved in public hearings and dive deeper and sort of make that tangible impact on like the future of Victoria's housing.
100%. It's important, and like you just said, we may have a much bigger impact than we may think. So I think, I don't want to say weaponizing, but in a sense, using that to our advantage is huge.
Absolutely. Just doing our best to make sure that like like I think I said this in the Kevin Hall conversation briefly when I was in there for like 2 minutes at the end, because again I love talking about this. It's just like we kind of have it's our commitment, I guess, or it's our responsibility, that's the word I'm looking for, to students, to our UVic community, to advocate for what students want. We have to be, like, no one else is going to do it for us. We have to be responsible for advocating for change. We have to be the people who are driving that initiative to make the city like prepped for the future. Because I think we're like very much at like the precipice of a huge change in how we live in cities.
Agreed. Yeah, and you mentioned the responsibility of students, but also the responsibility of educators, because as you mentioned, we don't have a real estate education here. So this club, a lot of the time, is the reason that a lot of students may know about this sort of stuff in the first place. So what's the goal with education going forward? I know that's one of our biggest pillars now that we've had the structural change. Just what's the goal of education going forward, and how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to sort of see what comes of the organization next year as like we move past my leadership and into a new leadership era. I'm really stoked to see what happens. I think from my perspective, at least, I think, whoever takes over the club they'll be sort of leading that charge, but I think education should be the like underlying thing that our entire team is working towards. I think we should really be so heavily focused on making sure that, if someone wants to read an article about what's going on in Victoria's real estate industry and they're a student, it should be on our website. If they want to like watch short form content about how to get into the real estate market as a young adult, it should be on our Instagram, right? Like we want our platform to be sort of that be all end all for students at UVic who want to learn about real estate. And there's so many facets that we can dive into there, whether it's like investing or the market specifically, or literally just buying your first home in this insane, crazy market. There's so much we can dive into, and I think having that as sort of the overarching or underlying pillar that we build the future of everything that we do off of. I think networking events always going to be there, hugely important. Advocacy always going to be there, hugely important. But having that ability to drive education in a way that maybe someday can encourage UVic to build some introductory real estate courses would be game changer.
That would be huge, and all that stuff too is it's on a very long timeline. So I think it's important we're thinking that far ahead, because what I've noticed a lot of is that this club is much more than just a university club. It's almost weird to call it a club in a sense. So just looking forward to the future. Is this something you plan to be involved in? I mean, obviously you can't think this far ahead, but 5-10 years, is this something where you're thinking, I always want to be a part of the real estate club in some sense, whether it's very high up leadership or guidance, or is it something you want to build and then let grow on its own?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at least for the first few years, longer term, I'd love to be involved, but at least for the first few years, I'll be involved. We're going to be building out something called like our board of directors, which myself, like I'll be chairing, and John Cook, who's one of our senior advisors, will be the vice chair of, and we have 6 industry professionals, really cool industry professionals from like Victoria and Vancouver, who have played a huge part in what we've built so far. They'll sort of be on board as strategic advisors and mentors to help the organization make sure that it's moving forward correctly. Because I think you're 100% right. Like it has become something that's more than just a club. I think it's actually like an organism. It's like a platform.
It is.
And I think our responsibility is to do so much more than just hold networking events and try to educate students. We need to be really making sure that we're playing a huge role in the future of the city. So at least for the first couple of years, I will be chairing the board. I don't know, it's tough to say if I'll be doing that for like 5-10 years, but like I would love to be involved. I think this is the type of thing that like if you can start this and successfully like make sure it carries on, it's just such a cool thing to be able to point back to and say, look what I was able to do, look what I was able to create.
100%. So the real estate club is half of what you're working on right now. I want to touch on the other half right now, the student housing initiative. Maybe if you could just give a description of what that is, the goals with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the student housing initiative was sort of founded off the back of that like public hearing we were involved with last February, where we basically saw the tremendous impact that the student voice can have on like housing approvals. And from there, myself and 2 other UVic students who were also involved with the real estate club, John and Grace, big fans of them, we created the student housing initiative to basically say, okay, if this is a problem in Victoria where students have this power but they can't really use it, because who wants to be at like a public hearing at 7 p.m. on a Thursday night, like for very few students. It also exists across Canada, right? Like if it exists here in Victoria, it's something that'll exist in Vancouver and Toronto and all these other places that are facing this like housing crisis. So basically what we did is we founded this concept and surveyed students in those 3 cities at 5 universities and built like a report off of that, and ended up using that report to engage on like 4,500 units of housing and help those thousands of units get approved.
Right.
And this year we're sort of building off of what we did last year to expand more and do another survey. This year we're expanding to Toronto, Vancouver, Victoria, and then also Calgary and Kelowna.
Yeah.
So that survey is live right now. Definitely go
check it out.
Yeah.
We're also until the end of the month.
Absolutely. We're giving away, last year we gave away $500 times 6, so $3,000. This year we're giving away $500 times 10, so 10 tuition grants of $500 for a total of $5,000. Please do the survey.
We're a survey, $500. I'll give it up.
Exactly. No, we're super happy with how it's going, and it's just one of those things that I think we have to be involved with, right?
Yeah.
Like, student voice is so important, and if we can push that forward in any capacity, it's huge.
Yeah. So you mentioned the city list expanded. Has the survey itself expanded at all this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So since like last year, since when we basically did it the first time, there's been a lot of new like legislative changes in BC, like removing public hearings in the future, getting rid of Airbnbs, sort of increasing density was another one, increasing zoning. Just definitely throwing a lot of words at you, but like look it up. Big fans. I think the BC government's done a really good job. So what we wanted to do in BC specifically, although we did it for our survey across the country, is sort of update some of the questions to make sure that we're reflecting the current state of things and essentially compare how students think last year versus this year.
Right.
And also compare how students think in different like political demographics or in different geographical political climates, right? Like Calgary has a very different background in politics than Victoria does. And it's interesting to think, okay, what do people in Calgary think about housing? How do they view student housing? How do they view, like, what do they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was really the driving force behind it.
Cool, yeah. And one of those things, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're building out to help with that is the platform to help students find housing, right?
Yeah.
House,
Yeah,
can you touch
absolutely.
on that a bit more, the goal?
Yeah, 100%. So it's called Student House. It's basically like a marketplace platform for student housing, saying like, look, right now we understand that finding housing as a student is incredibly inefficient. You've basically like a full-time job. Over the summer, you're going to spend hours every day checking like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace.
It's brutal.
Terrifying. Like I know for the summer that I was looking for housing and wasn't able to.
It's stressful. It's not just annoying. It's the difference between an annoyance and then also a genuine problem, a genuine scare.
Exactly. No, absolutely. So I think that's something we're really looking into building out right now. It's very much in its early stages, but I think given how chaotic and flawed the student housing market is right now, I think there's room for it. There's a lot of really well-funded marketplaces for housing that are focused on like everyone.
Right.
But I think if you dive into students and really focus on, okay, how can we help students the most, while still sort of maintaining like a free product for them,
right?
It would be really cool, and I think you'd have a lot of interest from students who are
everyone's
struggling, right? Like it's just a problem that needs to be solved, in my opinion.
100%, yeah. So and the idea would be to just have students be able to sign up for it and only have them peruse the different housing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the different concepts we're looking at is working with whether it's developers who have markets coming or buildings coming to market, whether it's homeowners whose kids have moved out and have like spare bedrooms and would like to rent them out. Really just anyone who would like to rent to students, saying, okay, how can we find you the best student tenants?
Right.
And I think the way to do that would be to, like maybe we work with universities to have like something tied into residence where there's coming out of first year university, right? Students, like I struggled with this. I had no credit history. I had no landlord references. I had nothing. And it's really difficult to find a place to live in this really low vacancy market.
Especially when you're not from here, you don't have
Exactly.
connections at all. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So I think if we can sort of connect the only bit of information we have, which is like your residence and how you've done residence in first year,
Right.
and sort of connect that perspective from your CL into a profile that can be used by like housing providers to sort of like as the building block. But I think there's so much more we could do on top of that. I think there are probably better ways we could do it. Our challenge as an organization, as whatever Student House becomes, is to figure out basically how to find the best student tenants, like that makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah. And is this something that you would want to be across Canada?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you mentioned talking with other real estate clubs. just curious about those relationships as well.
Yeah,
How that
100%.
played into it.
100%. I think sort of initially, like building out all those relationships for the student housing initiative was the goal. But going beyond that, we've, I think, built a network of like really cool people across the country who are doing some really awesome things.
Yeah.
And I think we're really well positioned to dive into something like a student housing marketplace because we know students and we know real estate people. Like,
the middle ground.
seems like a good fit to me.
Yeah.
And it just comes down to like execution. I think it's a good idea. But good ideas are kind of worthless if you don't execute on them correctly.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, we've talked about two of the organizations you've started or helped start. So I just wanted to, for anyone out there that may be looking to do something similar to Julian, let's call you Julian, someone similar to Julian, what's some advice you would give them for people to start an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question and probably one of my favorites. Just start. Like that's the biggest thing for me. I think every time you get like bogged down in your head with trying to research every possible aspect of something, it takes too long. Like just go out there, like if you're creating a school club or something, create like an Instagram page, create a LinkedIn, like make it real, make it something that you have accountability to, that is like out there in the world that people can stumble upon, or to whatever extent people can find it. Make it real. And if you're building an organization or you're trying to build a business, just go after it and test it. Like build a landing page, like ones that are like $10 a year. Spend like $10 on Facebook ads and see if you can get some waitlist signups, see if you can get some customers in, see if it's something that gets traction.
Yeah.
Just don't wait. I think that's my biggest advice. Like once you start, it only gets easier.
It ramps up from there. Yeah,
exactly.
And I know something you've done very well that I've noticed is scaling the organizations. Increasing the capacity, having more people on. What's some advice for doing that? When you went from just you in your room doing the real estate club, how did it get to where it is now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one super depends on like the organization you're going for and like what your end goal is. Like with the real estate club, my goal very much has been building this into like something where it's like content focused and content driven. Like as great as networking events are, not everyone can always come out to like an evening event on a Tuesday night. Maybe not everyone even wants to, right? Like we want to make sure that this is as accessible as possible. So content was a huge focus, and that was something that was really well adjusted to building a big team of passionate people. Yeah. So on the real estate club side of things, we've really just been able to attract cool people like you who are passionate about real estate, interested. Of course. Like I said at the beginning, you're the perfect person to be involved with this. Like people who are interested, people who are passionate. We've never cared about experience. Like all that matters is you're interested and passionate, because I think like you said, right, like we're trying to build something that's a little bit bigger than a student club. Like our aspirations are to be like this entity, this organization that's like the one-stop shop for everything real estate. Yeah. So in that sense, like when you have big dreams like that, you kind of have to expand capacity. Right. So much easier when it's like a club organization where no one's getting paid. Yeah. I think it's more challenging when it's like an actual business and you're trying to grow from there. But for the student housing initiative, we've hired campus ambassadors this year for our survey, which we launched like last Friday, I think. I don't know even know when it was, just like at the beginning of March. And we're sitting at the time of recording, we're at like 310 responses, which is, I'm pretty stoked with that. And campus ambassadors have been a huge reason why. Yeah. So they've been like just super passionate about, again, sharing the survey, seeing the impact, and getting a little bit of compensation for their help as well. Right? It's awesome.
Of course, and that runs to the end of March.
To the end of April, yeah.
End of April?
End of March.
End of March. Okay, cool. So it'll be, if this comes out, it'll be up. So go do the survey. Yeah. There's a chance to win some money, $5,000 on the line. You can win $500 tuition grants. So go do the survey. Yeah,
definitely go do the survey. Genuinely, helps.
It helps everyone.
So much.
Helps everyone.
Absolutely.
So listen, we've talked a lot about what you've created. I want to touch a little bit more on you as a person. I'm just wondering what you've got going on in life outside of the organizations we touched on, just in terms of your career and where you're hoping to go.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think graduating in like basically a month or two at this point, like very much end of classes at end of April. Like day of recording this, I just wrote my last midterm of my university career, which is really
that's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And I have one exam, so I've got one last like big test left. Yeah. I really don't know. I think like that's one of the challenges of being in this position, which I'm so fortunate to be in, is like I love leading and I love building things and I love creating something that's needed. So I know I want to do something on my own eventually.
Yeah.
Whether that comes now as like a function of the student house concept or the student housing initiative or whatever it might look like, it's really like we'll see. I don't know. But there are also some really cool things that are coming up, like some really cool initiatives in real estate that I would love to be a part of. I know BC Builds, which is a massive program that the provincial government launched and is sort of led by a 2-term Victoria Mayor, Lisa Helps. Super interested in getting involved with that in some capacity. So I think that's something I'd be interested in. Just realistically, for me, my biggest goal is to have that positive impact on housing. I think, like I said at the very start, there's so much wrong fundamentally with how we do housing in Canada, and we just need so much more of it so quickly. So I'd love to be a part of that solution, and I think, in whatever way I can be, like having impact and being involved, like that's really all I want.
Yeah. Do you think that ever goes towards politics, or is it always going to be more of a boots on the ground thing for you?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I don't know. I could see myself getting involved politically like later in life. I think I don't know. It's definitely something I've thought about longer term, but I would want to do some cool things in real estate or in industry first. And I think it's important to have like background and sort of know the things that you're speaking about and have worked a little bit more in them.
So last thing I wanted to touch on, because it's very in the news and this will be happening after this podcast comes out, is our last event of the year, biggest event of the year, Spring Social. If you want to just touch a bit on that. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I'm super excited about it. I think it will be quite possibly the coolest event we've ever hosted. We're hosting it at the Atrium, which is a massive office space downtown owned by Jal Properties. And we have the sort of entire atrium, you would call it, like the entire open space in the middle booked out. And we've got planning to have 100 students, 50 industry professionals with a really cool keynote speaker, Byron Chard, who's the CEO of Chard Development, one of the biggest and coolest developers in Western Canada, in my opinion. They did a super cool project in downtown Victoria that combined like market housing, affordable housing, like rental and for sale housing, and it also had like a daycare and a grocery store.
Just everything.
Exactly, right? Like it had everything that we should be building for in like 15-minute cities. Anyways, I digress because I love housing. You should come to the event because we're going to be announcing our new president for next year. We're going to have some drinks as well. We'll have some food. It'll be a good time. I'm excited.
Yeah, a lot of opportunities you can't find anywhere else. Free admission for any student out there. So link in bio. Go get it. All right, Julian. I think that's all we got. Thank you so much for joining the show. Appreciate everything you've done for me, especially, but also everything you've done for the university and the club. Thank you for joining the show.
I appreciate it. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled that this organization has come as far as it has, and I'm just really excited to see where it continues to go in the future.
Me too. All right. Peace.